It was a little after 2 in the morning, May 10, 2024, when a 911 call was placed from a quiet cul-de-sac in Burke, Virginia, a well-lit suburban street where people mow their lawns on Saturdays and wave politely without really knowing their neighbors. The caller was 49-year-old Daniel Mark Callahan, a name that wouldn't have meant much to anyone outside of law enforcement. But within the FBI, where he'd worked for over 2 decades in the cybercrime division, he was considered solid, unshakable, efficient, deeply private. On the call, his voice was eerily steady as he told the dispatcher that his wife had been stabbed, that she wasn't breathing, and that he tried to help but it was too late. The dispatcher, noting no panic or hysteria, flagged the call as suspicious even before first responders arrived. When Fairfax County officers stepped into the scene less than 10 minutes later, they found 47-year-old Elaine Marie Callahan lying face down in the kitchen, her blood soaking into the tile grout in patterns that, according to forensic analysts later, would suggest movement struggle. Elaine was a well-known elementary school teacher and PTA organizer, remembered by colleagues and neighbors as warm, enthusiastic, the kind of mom who always had extra snacks in the car. As one friend put it, the couple had been married since 2003 after meeting at Virginia Tech, and together they had 2 children, Emily, 16, and Ben, 12, who were both found asleep upstairs, unharmed and undisturbed, a fact that would later send chills down the spines of investigators. The Callahans were the picture of a respectable, stable family in a neighborhood where people rarely even locked their doors. But as the hours turned to days, a different image began to emerge, one of control, deception, and quietly mounting pressure beneath the surface of a 20-year marriage. Interviews with Elaine's friends and family painted a portrait that stood in stark contrast to the couple's holiday cards and social media accounts. Beginning in the fall of 2023, Elaine had started seeing a therapist in nearby Annandale. She told the therapist that she felt suffocated at home and had even asked for information about divorce proceedings in Virginia, though she hadn't taken legal steps yet. Her sister later told investigators that Elaine had confided fears that Daniel was hiding something, that he was emotionally distant and becoming more secretive, working late hours, avoiding conversation, and spending long stretches away under the pretense of work assignments in D.C. And yet, no one suspected anything violent. Elaine was discreet, almost painfully so, about marital troubles. There were no loud fights, no visible bruises, no calls to the police. But there were red flags in retrospect. A friend recalled seeing her in the Target parking lot just weeks before the murder, sitting in her car alone and crying into her phone. And then there were the finances. A forensic accountant hired by the prosecution later uncovered that Elaine had quietly opened a second checking account in March 2024 and had begun moving small amounts of money from the couple's shared account. Around the same time Daniel's spending patterns shifted, he started withdrawing cash in odd increments and making uncharacteristic purchases, including a suite at a storage facility in Arlington and several high-end dinners charged to a card he'd previously used almost exclusively for fuel and groceries. Through subpoenaed phone records, investigators traced Daniel's movements over the months leading to the murder and discovered frequent late-night visits to a condo in Arlington, leased by a woman named Carly Whitman, a 34-year-old paralegal whose name Elaine had once mentioned in passing, according to her therapist's notes, describing her simply as someone I think he's seeing. That Daniel had been involved in an extramarital affair wasn't immediately apparent on the morning of Elaine's death, but in hindsight, it became a thread that began to unravel everything else. Neighbors described Daniel as stiff, distant, even cold, like someone playing the part of a husband rather than being one. One said, and co-workers, though initially reluctant to speak ill of an agent with such a long-standing reputation, admitted under oath that he often came across as emotionally shut down, someone who didn't socialize, didn't confide, and didn't ever seem happy. And yet, despite all this, no one imagined murder. Not until blood spatter patterns, surveillance footage, and digital forensics began to tell a story far darker than anyone on Pine Meadows Lane could have guessed. On the evening of May 9, 2024, just hours before the murder, Elaine Callahan had attended a spring fundraiser at Groveton Elementary, where she taught second grade. By all outward appearances, she was cheerful and engaged, chatting with parents, hugging students, laughing at the raffle table, but several of her closest friends would later tell detectives that she seemed unusually contemplative that night, and one recalled Elaine leaning in close and saying quietly, "Things are about to change." That change, as investigators would later confirm, was a reference to the fact that Elaine had an appointment scheduled the following day with a divorce attorney in Alexandria. She never made it. That same night, at 9:15 p.m., Daniel Callahan's phone pinged off a tower in Arlington, where investigators later confirmed he had driven to the condo of Carly Whitman, the woman he had been having an affair with for at least 6 months. Surveillance footage from the building's exterior cameras showed him entering around 9:22 p.m. and leaving again just before midnight. His route back to Burke, reconstructed via traffic cameras and license plate recognition systems, placed him entering the neighborhood at approximately 12:37 a.m. At 12:42 a.m., the Callahan's home security system logged Daniel entering through the front door using his personal code. At 2:07 a.m., he called 911. What happened in those 85 minutes became the center of a sprawling investigation. According to his statement to police, Daniel claimed that he had fallen asleep in the downstairs den shortly after returning home, only to be awoken by an unfamiliar noise coming from the kitchen. When he got up to investigate, he said he found Elaine already collapsed on the floor, a knife in her chest and blood pooling beneath her. He claimed he attempted CPR but quickly realized she was beyond help. Yet when first responders arrived at 2:16 a.m., they found Daniel dry-eyed and composed, with no visible blood on his hands, his clothing, or the towel he claimed to have used. One paramedic would later tell investigators, "It didn't look like he'd touched her at all. There were no signs of forced entry. The front door had been locked from the inside. The alarm system, state-of-the-art and regularly maintained, showed no triggered alerts. The back door and windows were all sealed. Upstairs, the Callahan's children were both found asleep in their rooms, unaware of what had transpired." Emily, the couple's 16-year-old daughter, would later tell investigators during her second interview that she had heard her parents arguing that night, sometime around 1:30 a.m. When pressed on what she heard, she said, "I couldn't make out the words, but Mom sounded angry, tired angry, and then it got really quiet." That testimony, initially brushed aside, became a cornerstone in what detectives soon realized was not a break-in gone wrong but a meticulously staged domestic homicide. Forensic analysis began to contradict Daniel's version of events almost immediately. Blood pattern analysis revealed spatter on the underside of his left wristwatch, traces invisible to the naked eye but flagged during luminol testing, that placed him within 2 feet of Elaine at the time she was stabbed. The kitchen knife, wiped nearly clean but still bearing partial prints inconsistent with normal kitchen use, was later found to have been repositioned, a detail that a forensic pathologist said suggests deliberate staging. Perhaps most damning was the digital footprint Daniel left behind. Deleted text messages, recovered from his cloud backup, showed a chilling timeline. On May 8th, Elaine had texted her sister, "He thinks I don't know. I'm getting the papers tomorrow." Her laptop revealed a draft email, unsent but timestamped for the morning of May 10th, in which she confronted Daniel about the affair and stated her intent to seek separation. In April, just weeks before the murder, Daniel had filed to increase Elaine's life insurance policy to $1.2 million, a change that required a signature from the insured, one that forensic document examiners later determined had been copied from a 2019 scan and digitally manipulated. Meanwhile, surveillance footage from a neighbor's Ring camera showed a flickering light coming from the Callahan kitchen window at 1:27 a.m., consistent with the forensic team's estimate of time of death. At 1:32 a.m., the same camera picked up a tall silhouette pacing near the window, an outline consistent with Daniel's frame. When police executed a search warrant on Daniel's work-issued laptop and mobile device, they found encrypted folders containing private communications with Carly, including one message in which Daniel wrote, "Things will be easier when it's just us." Sent on April 30th, Carly, when questioned, initially denied any knowledge of marital issues or foul play. But under pressure, and after being presented with messages showing Daniel's increasing frustration with Elaine's hesitancy to divorce, Carly admitted that he had told her Elaine was unstable, and that she could ruin everything if she wanted to. According to Carly, Daniel had said he was afraid Elaine would use the kids against him, and that he couldn't take the pressure anymore. That confession didn't implicate Carly directly, but it unraveled the lie Daniel had told police, that their marriage had been stable, that there had been no arguments, no plans to separate. It became clear to investigators that the image of a man awakened by violence in the night was nothing more than a fabrication, and that beneath the clean lines of their suburban kitchen, beneath the silence of their slumbering children, a calculated execution had taken place in the early hours of a school day. The arrest came quietly, just 13 days after Elaine Callahan's murder, when Daniel was summoned to the Fairfax County Police Department under the pretense of providing additional testimony. He arrived in a crisp gray suit, carrying a leather portfolio, projecting the calm confidence of a man certain of his own narrative. But when detectives confronted him with the forensics, the watch spatter, the alarm logs, the manipulated insurance documents, his demeanor shifted, not with panic, but with what one investigator described as resignation, like someone who knew the walls were always going to close in, but had hoped for more time. The trial began on October 21, 2024, in Fairfax County Circuit Court, and by then the prosecution had assembled a devastatingly detailed case that turned the courtroom into a crucible of quiet horror. They walked the jury minute by minute through Daniel's movements that night, introduced bloodstain pattern analysis, and called to the stand a digital forensic expert who explained how the fake signature on the life insurance amendment had been constructed. But it was the emotional testimony from Elaine's inner circle that tore away any remnants of doubt. Her sister's trembling voice as she read the last text Elaine had sent her, "Pray for me tomorrow," her therapist's detailed notes outlining a woman caught between fear and obligation, and, most hauntingly, the testimony of 16-year-old Emily Callahan, who took the stand flanked by a court-appointed advocate. She told the courtroom in slow, halting words about how she heard her mother's voice rise and crack that night, how she covered her head with a pillow when the arguing stopped, and how she now woke up every night at 2:07 a.m., the exact time her father called 911, unable to stop reliving that moment. Daniel's defense team argued diminished capacity, painting a picture of a man crushed by professional stress, blindsided by marital collapse, and psychologically manipulated by a younger woman. But the jury saw through it. They saw the planning, the erased messages, the insurance maneuvering, the timing, the precision, and they saw the choice. On November 15th, after just 5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a unanimous verdict: guilty of first-degree murder, falsification of insurance documents, and obstruction of justice. The sentencing hearing was raw, filled with victim impact statements that left even the judge visibly shaken. Elaine's father spoke of the empty chair at Thanksgiving. Her colleagues read letters from students who still asked when Miss C was coming back, and her son Ben, just 12 years old, submitted a drawing of his family, his mother faded in soft pencil, his father drawn in red, behind bars. Daniel Callahan was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Carly Whitman, though never charged, resigned from her job and relocated out of state, refusing all media requests. The Callahan home was sold within 6 months, the kitchen remodeled by the new owners who said they wanted to give it a new energy, unaware perhaps that no change of tile or paint could erase what had happened there. The children now live with Elaine's sister in Charlottesville, their names changed in school records, their therapists working slowly, patiently, to rebuild the sense of safety that was gutted in a single night. And yet, the community around Pine Meadows Lane still doesn't speak of it openly. The story is whispered at back-to-school nights and behind PTA meetings, always with the same edge of disbelief. That a man entrusted with secrets at the highest level of national security could hide such rot in plain sight. That a woman as strong and beloved as Elaine could vanish not in a blaze of chaos but in a muffled struggle behind a kitchen counter. And that in a house where children slept upstairs, what looked like a normal Thursday night could unravel into a lifetime of trauma. What remains is a photo, taken at the school fundraiser just hours before her death. Elaine standing between two students, smiling, unaware that the end had already begun.